Hey everyone, I'm Kathy Cox-Boniel, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Skills Region 8 La STEM Center in Louisiana. And through my role there, we have initiated a statewide effort called the Louisiana Girls Collaborative, which means we're part of a larger group of people, partners across the country, the National Girls Collaborative Project. And so, as we've relaunched this effort in Louisiana, we have begun putting together programming efforts to help spread the word about girls in STEM and to locate resources that can help our girls as they advance their way through STEM. And sometimes we're very lucky that they find us. And that brings us to what we're doing tonight. I got an email from someone who had found us. Ashni found us and she got very involved. And she has been the brainchild behind this wonderful webinar, our first webinar that we're presenting now. And I'm going to let her give you her vision about this because it is indeed her brainchild. I'm so proud of her, and you'll be looking forward to hearing lots from her as we move through the future. So, Ashni, I'm going to throw it to you and you get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Miss Kathy, for that wonderful welcome and kicking the webinar off. Yes, my name is Ashni Shah, and I am a high school senior from Shreveport, Louisiana. I go to Caddo Magnet High School, and I'm super excited to be help hosting the first STEMHerWay webinar hosted by the Louisiana Girls Collaborative, and I'm really excited to get started today. So just a little bit of background about the webinar itself. So the purpose of today and the whole program, the whole STEMHerWay program itself, is to inspire young people like myself to explore diverse opportunities in STEM and empower each other to pursue our passions fearlessly. And so during today's webinar, we will be featuring a different or during each webinar, sorry, we will be featuring a different female professional in science, technology, engineering, or math to speak on their work. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Heather Kleiner, and she will be talking today about her own work and how to get involved in STEM as a woman. So yes, so just an introduction for Dr. Kleiner. So Dr. Heather Kleiner serves as the director of the Northwest Louisiana STEM Innovation Center, Region 7. It is housed at the Scyport Discovery Center, a 92,000 square foot science center museum on the downtown Shreveport riverfront. Dr. Kleiner earned her PhD in pharmacology and toxicology at the University of Texas Austin, and she received postdoctoral training at the UTMD Anderson Cancer Center. And Dr. Kleiner also serves as a faculty member at LSU Health Shreveport, which is actually where I am now doing research this summer, for 10 years conducting cancer prevention research and teaching. Dr. Kleiner joined Scyport in 2014 when she managed grants and other sponsored programs, and she founded the North Louisiana STEM Alliance, or now the STEAM Alliance. And as the LA STEM Region 7 Director, Dr. Kleiner connects 10 parishes and manages outreach programs such as the Bars Without Barriers Prison Outreach, GSK Science in the Summer, First Robotics Competition Community-Based Team 9708, and the co-created NASA-funded Aeronautics Museum in a Box. And Dr. Kleiner truly shares the vision that Northwest Louisiana grows in its own workforce, and she believes in the talent of the diverse population that she has served for 21 years. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Kleiner, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. So you have the floor.
Wow, thank you for such a fabulous introduction, Ashni. And Kathy, thank you again for taking on the Louisiana Girls Collaborative, because it's time for us to do this again. And no better hands than yours, trust me. I did put together a little slide deck. It's mostly photos and memories, and it's just for storytelling. I love to tell stories. So if you don't mind, I could show some of my slide deck, but anytime just stop me if you want, and you may have a copy of these slides. Anybody who wants a copy, okay? All right. Let's see if this is it. I'll tell you that technology changed a lot since I was using Apple IIs in graduate school and graph paper and inserting photographs manually into all 12 copies of my dissertation. But here we are. Do you see the image of Siteport at night? Isn't it beautiful? You should come out sometime when we have an evening event. Maybe we'll hold one for teachers. That would be fun. All right, so this is where I work now. There's an observatory on the roof. And I love this place. When I first came, it was like, oh boy, I get to work at Disneyland, only it's Shreveport's Disneyland or Louisiana's Disneyland. But how did I get there? You know, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my pathway. And I hope that it's as interesting to you as it is to people like my mom and my dad and my friends and even myself. And 21 years, wow, serving this community for 21 years seems unreal. So I'm a sign painter's daughter. My dad, then and now, was actually an artist. And art doesn't pay the bills, so he became a commercial sign painter in Dallas. And that's me then and now. And my dad is still with me. He is 84 and won't stop. He recently climbed up on a ladder and painted a sign at Davis, which is, I think, a little crazy. I wish he wouldn't, but he does. Dad told me when I was a teenager that sign painting is no place for a girl. And I was mad about that, but maybe back at that time, not giving away my age, he could have been right. Just because the guys out there were rather misogynistic, they snuffed a lot of vapors and smoked a lot of weed. Although Dad is an upright guy, very, very upright, and he ended up owning his own sign business, Nicewonger Signs in Dallas. In fact, we painted the first Chili's on 4th and Greenville Avenue in 1974. I remember that. Anyway, I went into STEM. I became a scientist instead, since I couldn't be a sign painter. Dad tried to put me into flight attendant school. I was like, no way. What do you think I'm gonna? No, Dad, I can do this. And this, I mean, at the age of 18, I left Dallas, packed everything I had, went to an apartment, and started college at UT Austin. I didn't even know where to go. I had no instructions from my parents. And so I went to the Fretz Park Library in Dallas. And back then you could look up colleges in the yellow pages. And there were these yellow page books. And I had to pick out what college I wanted to go to. And I'm like, well, I like plants. I like nature. Oh, natural sciences. Okay, well, I need a state school because we're that middle class that doesn't get funding but can't really afford it. So UT Austin, yep, that's where I'll go. And that's where I ended up. One application, one college, got in, and learned very quickly that a bachelor's in biology doesn't get you anywhere unless you want to go to medical school. And that wasn't really my interest, but I worked my way through college. And while I did that, I worked at the bookstore, Bevo's bookstore, loved it, but I was on financial aid. And as soon as I got an opportunity, I worked in a lab. I could choose working at the gym, the library, or a biomedical research laboratory with Dr. Lau. I thought Dr. Lau was a man. Look at my own thinking. Sure enough, I took, of course, the biomedical research lab. And as you see, there's a picture of Dr. Serene S. Lau, my dear mentor. And I studied benzene metabolites on kidney toxicity, even as an undergraduate student as a work study. As I'm washing test tubes, she said, oh no, you're too good for that. I need you to do the biochemical assays. So there I am doing the assays and a lot of analytical chemistry. We published 4 papers. After I passed my qualifying exam, we bypassed the masters altogether. I had my daughter Courtney after my 3rd year. It took me 5 years to graduate, and people said, "What happened?" I'm like, "Well, 5 years isn't really that bad if you think about it." And I finished up a 254-page dissertation. So it was really fantastic. I loved it. And then after that, and what in the notes will say is Dr. Lau said, a woman can do anything that a man can do, even better. She also taught me to mentor the younger students early on. So I was always mentoring a couple of high school students in her lab, which I loved. I couldn't find a better picture of him, unfortunately, but this is John DiGiovanni. This is my postdoctoral mentor at MD Anderson Cancer Center. And there was a lesser known part of MD Anderson Cancer Center in Smithville, Texas, which was not far from Austin. It was only about 45 miles east in the piney woods. And it was an entire department on one campus. Somebody had donated the woods to MD Anderson. And I just fell in love with the place, fell in love with the research, the whole philosophy, everything. So we were not on the main campus in Houston, but John DiGiovanni was a wonderful mentor. He's still going strong at UT Austin. Dr. Lau went to Arizona, and now I think she's in Michigan. Still hanging in there, doing their work. And we had these t-shirts that said Johnny D's super cool carcinogenesis crew. And he had a super lab, 5 different senior postdoctoral fellows, which is what I was doing there. And each one of us managed the gold standard, an R01 grant. I went through at least 2 R01 grants, and also mentored numerous summer student interns. I published 7 research articles, but what the interest to me was using natural products to prevent cancer. That was so cool to me, especially my dad and, just his own philosophy growing up with him, being a vegetarian and, really focusing on health. I thought, oh, this is great, but we were using mechanistic studies, not just hearsay. And so we did that. And then when it came time to look for a faculty position, John gave me an opportunity to spend as much time as I needed. So for 2 years, I interviewed and served as actually a junior faculty member there, because you can only be a postdoc for 5 years max. And so I was there for quite a while, and I had purchased a home. I was married, had my second child, Michael. It was great. We had 5 acres out there, but I traveled to 7 different interviews nationwide, across the country. And some of those I went for second interviews. When they bring you in for a second interview, they're very interested in hiring you for that job. You may have a 50-50 chance of getting that job. And it was University of Iowa, Loma Linda University, Western University Health Sciences Center, which was a private pharmacy school in California made out of an old shopping mall because the demand was so high. And I turned down the 2 in California, Loma Linda and Western University. And University of Iowa chose a more senior person, which I was glad, because it's way too cold up there for me. I did interview for a industry position, although I was more interested in academia. So I interviewed at Pharmacia Upjohn in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was very nice. I would have had my own lab with 2 master's level workers there, but they wanted an answer after 1 week. They gave me an offer. When you do the interview process for universities, it could take 6 to 9 months to get that job. They wanted an answer in 1 week, and it was my first interview. I told them, I can't tell you yes. And so I'm going to have to tell you no, because I can't keep you waiting. I know your clock is ticking. I'm, I'm glad because I just don't do well in cold weather. I like the South, and I wanted to be close to family. There is one position I kind of wish that I had not passed up, and that was a postdoctoral position with Urs Bolsterli at the Nestle company in Switzerland. And at that time, they were paying $60,000. And that was when they were paying $24,000 in the United States for a similar position. It would have been great. And I just insisted on being close to my family because I had 2 children. But if in hindsight, I think I could have done it. So that was a road not taken that I kind of wish I had taken. But next up, oh, and Johnny D said, don't settle, know your worth, research, and negotiate. And I did all of those. Okay. So next. So I took this tenure track faculty position at LSU Health Shreveport. And my start date was February 1, 2003. And I was 5 months pregnant with Austin, the one in the picture there. Couldn't find the baby picture. They used my prego picture on their graduate student catalog because they wanted to really show that they supported women, right? But when it came, and I negotiated my startup package and my salary, and I got a better offer than what they put on the table. So that was definitely true, Johnny D. And I had to set up my lab quickly because I was due in just a few months. So I picked the best of the best of the best, Misty Prince, as my lab manager. And she is still there after 20 years. She stayed with me the full 10 years and helped run the lab. I could only take off 4 weeks for the baby, and I ended up being divorced from my first husband, but I kept the name because I'd already published so much. I will tell you, it's not all a rosy story. And for me, I had what they called, quote, bad advice on my start date. And during the tenure process, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, but that's something that I didn't know, and I wish I had known, although it was a little bit of, I don't know. Let me just say that my boss at the time, who is no longer with us, put his foot in his mouth. When he asked about my start date, I said either February 1 or July 1. And he said, what? Why? And I told him, because I'm 5 months pregnant. And he said, I thought you were serious about this career. Now, would you feel coerced? Would you feel afraid that you would lose that position if you didn't take the February 1 job? I did. So I took the February 1 job, not knowing that it would set me behind in the tenure and promotion process. And I didn't find that out until 2008. So what do you have to do to get tenure, and what is tenure? Well, as a tenured faculty member, number one, tenure track and tenured faculty members have a lab assigned to them. And number two, they have teaching expectations, research expectations, and service expectations. And you put together a dossier that goes around not just through your university, but actually outside of the university. And you either get promoted or you have to leave. Now, I did get tenure. I will tell you that. I was a tenured faculty member when I left the university. Your timeline is supposed to be 5 years. The clock is ticking, but the clock starts ticking from May. So when I started in February, my timeline was cut short by 10 months, and I didn't know that. So if I had waited until after Austin was born, I would have had more time. So I had to put in a rebuttal or an appeal to the Tenure and Promotion Committee. And I couldn't tell them what my chairman had said to me. Instead, I had to say, quote, poor advice on start date. That wasn't the only incident, but that's all I'm going to talk about, because really, you know, there are going to be some people, individuals, it may not be institutional, but there can be some people who will stick their foot in their mouth. And that's what it's like to be a woman in STEM. But on the research service and teaching, I published 30, at that time, I had published 30 original peer-reviewed research articles, one book chapter, served on over 50 service committees. I had received 2 grants from the National Cancer Institute and a $1.3 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. I was even an invited speaker to South Korea for 10 days, which was, oh, such a highlight. And the teaching load was relatively light, and I was teaching medical students and graduate students. I will say this, I'm not the only one who noticed this. Women tend to take on more service roles in general, and that was definitely true for me. And I took on a lot of service roles, and that could have cut into my research time, for sure, yes. But that $1.3 million grant was a research teaching service grant, which I'll show you. But first, I thought it might be kind of fun to show you some of the experiments we did. And I have some of this in my fridge right now because I am not going to forget about this. This is Alpinia galanga. It's not your regular domestic ginger. It's a galanga that's used in Thai countries, any of the Eastern Asian countries. They use it for flavoring, and it gets the fishy taste out of some of the food. And so from my colleagues in Asia, which, you know, science is international, we learned that there's a compound in this galanga called acetoxycavacol acetate that is bioactive and can have some cancer preventive or even anti-cancer activities, anti-inflammatory activities. And so the thing is, though, that if you synthesize it, you get a racemic mix of the R and the S enantiomers. Well, what do you mean by that? If I hold my hands up like this, you have the left hand and the right hand. If I overlap them, you can see that they're not the same thing, they're mirror images. And in nature, you may only have the one, but in chemistry, it's not specific. You get both. And in the body, your body may react best to just the one that nature produced. So that's why we were making it in the lab and analyzing it and using the top layer for the experiments. It smells really good too. And so what we demonstrated here are some human breast cancer cells grown on tissue culture dishes in a sterile environment. And you have your control cells here, and you can see what is a monolayer of cells. They cover the plate completely. And then 10 micromolar and 15 micromolar of the acetoxycavacol acetate compound. So you see that the cells have changed at the intermediate dose. They're not as dense, they're sparser. Oopsies. But at the 50 micromolar for sure, they're rounding up, they're lifting off the plate, and then they float. And my students later on demonstrated through flow cytometry and special staining that they're undergoing programmed cell death or apoptosis. And I did share co-authorship with my students, of course, because they deserve it. Here you can see just a Kumasi blue stain of the cells with different doses, and you see just the density of the cells are gone because the cells had rounded up and floated. Even within 2 hours, you can just watch them as they round up and float. And these are the very aggressive MDA and B231 cells, breast cancer cells. So I focused on breast cancer and skin cancer for the most part, unless I collaborated. And then another assay that we did, these are all preclinical in vitro assays. We did do in vivo, but I chose not to discuss too many things today in the research. You can find it all on my LinkedIn page. But these are transwell inserts. They go into a little well like this, and then a little cup that's in there. And on the cup, it has like a filter. And on the filter, you have this collagen type substance that's called matrigel, very much like, say, the division between two types of tissues. So when cancer cells invade and then spread, what they do is they go to that barrier and they have sort of an acrosome that eats through and gets to the other side. And so that's what Matrigel is supposed to recapitulate. And as you see from this scanning electron microscope picture that I didn't take from the company, these are the cells that are going through the Matrigel pores of the filter. And so using that as a model, we demonstrated that we had to, conduct the assay and then stain the cells. And you can see that the human breast cancer cells, when not treated with the ginger compound, we had about 500 cells invade per Matrigel insert. But when we treated them with just 5 micromolar, which is a dose that's way below the dose that kills the cells, only 35 cells invaded. We count those with a cell counter, like that. So that's exciting. And then, of course, you would look into the molecular pathways and things like that. I'm sure the research has gone way farther since then. But what's the funnest part is sharing it with students and allowing students the opportunity to do research in your laboratory. So there were 2 student programs that myself and my colleagues initiated. One, the $1.3 million grant one, is the Bio Start program. It's students' first chance at doing sort of a biology or biomedical internship. And I heard you said you're doing one, so that's cool. Southwood High School it's still going on, the Biotechnology Academy that has been supported mainly by the BRF. And then they have actually a laminar flow hood in their lab at Southwood High School and a chemistry lab. And we were setting it up with extra things, Western blots and stuff. And I was training them as juniors how to get ready for their senior internship so that as a senior, they could come in and do an 18-week internship in one of the laboratories of the professors at LSU Health in the medical school. Now they couldn't really do clinical research because that's sort of you have to be at least 18 to do that. On the far left, you see Lisa Nance. She's still with Caddo Parish Schools. Lauren Vanterkai right here, she did retire. But I do actually keep track of some of these students still on Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's really cool to see where some of them have gone. One of them is with General Dynamics. One left to go to college out of state and has come back and is doing forensics. So it's really neat to see this many years on. Now, Dr. Yungfeng Zhao is the director of the program currently in the Department of Pharmacology. But this was that particular event is when they got their mentor match. So in that folder, they know which mentor they're matched with, and they got their lab coat. Kind of like the white coat ceremony, but high school level. Another internship program that myself and my colleagues did was called SUPER, Summer Undergraduate Pharmacology Experience in Research. And again, the idea was to increase the quality and quantity of domestic applicants for, in this case, graduate school. And it certainly worked. And so you see these happy, excited students here that are undergrads. Many of them came and joined our graduate program or other departments' graduate programs. And this one is still going on today as well. Oh, that doesn't belong there. I'll get rid of it. So my transition to SciPort, what happened? Why am I at SciPort now? Why would I leave behind a tenure track position? Well, in 2013, let me just tell you this. I had been in my second marriage, and sometimes professional women can be, unfortunately, the victims of domestic abuse. And I was one of those. And my second husband and I did not have children together. So that was one issue. Another issue was that at the same time my mother died, I was trying to get a divorce and I was being threatened. And so at that time, what I had to do was just sort of rethink my life. And I had, at that time also, grant funding was at an all-time low. And I said, you know what, it's just time to take a break. So I left the university and tried to put my life back together with my kids and my dad. And I got the divorce, and I still have my home. And then I was working on getting a master's in education when my best friend in the whole wide world told me, you know, you really ought to go check out SciPort. So I did, and I've been there ever since, with a lot of skills that are transferable, like grant writing, like all the science. It's just broader. And trust me, I keep busy. So it was a great welcome break. There I am doing Shark Week. So I know dissections very well. I could do all of that. Any kind of medical, biomedical, health science related stuff, I was able to do it. And I did remarry eventually, and that's my best friend in the whole wide world, Sharon Farah, and my husband, John Bouvier. I've still kept the name Kleiner as Dr. Kleiner. You call me Mrs. Bouvier or Miss Heather. But John is a cytotechnologist, and he's actually going to be starting at LSU Health Shreveport next week. He's been working in Longview. So he's a really good guy. It's just unfortunate that sometimes you trust people and you just are far too trusting. But at SciPort, we get to do so many things at all levels and at all ages. And if I think about working for 21 years in the community, growing our own workforce and working with children, especially those who don't always get the opportunity to do things, then it's all worth it. It's always worth it. These students are testing solar beads, and they're doing an experiment where they're putting sunscreen on these Petri dishes and using a UV light. So they're doing an experiment. This is part of the GSK Science in the Summer program. And now, since starting the North Louisiana STEAM Alliance, then we became, the Region 7 La STEM Center. So a lot of the flagship programs we get to do, I'm now moving into more of an administrative role, which is common, whether you're a scientist or whether you're an administrator or whether you're an educator. It just seems to be something you do. But we have our field trips or place-based learning. The one program I insist on being there for is the Bars Without Barriers, or Dads Without Barriers, turning incarcerated fathers into STEM role models for their children. We're still doing GSK Science in the Summer. And wow, we developed these museum in a box kits with NASA, which I'll show you, and several others, Mission to Mars, the Lighted Up Bridge Project, and of course, FIRST Robotics. This table you can get to later, but these are the different science programs that we teach over there at Caddo Correctional Center for the dads. And the whole idea is that we're going to break that multi-generational cycle. Instead of teaching gangs, they're teaching science, they're teaching STEM. So here are the kids learning from their dads. We teach the dads on the first week, and then the following week, the dads are the teachers and they teach the children. Been doing it since 2015. And in GSK Science in the Summer, we've had this program since 2015 as well. This picture are the students actually at Boys and Girls Club of the Big Pines, where my kids went in Marshall, Texas, where they're doing a heart dissection. But this year is be an astronomer. And so we're supposed to be serving 800 youth, 2nd through 6th grade. And every program is tied to careers. Now we have the whole Region 7 to draw from. And finally, the NASA Aeronautics Museum in a Box. I can't believe NASA's Aeronautics Division didn't have one yet, but we helped make this happen. And there are 14 activities in the kit, along with a student guide, from history of flight parts of the airplane, Bernoulli principle, drones, careers, all the way to the future of flight and more. And all these hands-on activities recapitulate what's in the student handbook. We distributed the 100 kits and then got 30 surveys back. And we even leveraged them with different programs like Bars Without Barriers or Dads Without Barriers. So here's the dad who already learned the kit the previous week, teaching his daughter how to use the kit and do the different science in the kit. And on the right panel, we actually brought a flight simulator out to Caddo Correctional. So this young man is testing the flight simulator because actually aeronautics and the whole aviation field is a high demand, high wage career in Louisiana, and they need it desperately as they're importing people from Texas. But we had other cohorts from Stockwell Elementary, Barksdale Air Force Base, homeschool groups, and STEM pioneers from Northwestern State University in Natchitoches. And then the airmen and women, we do consider them a vulnerable population, the children, because they have to move all the time. So that's what I like to do is work with the populations that don't always get what other people get. And here they are using the flight simulator and making chuck gliders as a family when the Blue Angels movie premiered at our IMAX. Finally, I'll just show you this robot. It was also funded by NASA to do the first robotics. I can't believe I started a robotics team. For Pete's sake, I was doing cancer research, but yes, this is how it happens. And so our teams competed at the Bayou Regionals in Kenner, Louisiana, and now we're gearing up for a second year. And anybody from the parish or anybody that can drive to Scytheport can join our team. It's a community-based team. So we collaborate with numerous community partners. I have about 230 community partners from over 80 organizations. And really what resonates with me is the diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. You know, that's infused in everything that I do, and family engagement. And that we have to leverage grants. I'm pretty darn good with grants. I forgot to tell you how many or how much, but it's a lot. And I'm glad to do it because it supports our organization, it supports our community. And as I say, let's not fight for pieces of the pie. Let's just bake more pies. Yeah. And my XYY hobby, as they call it, is drag racing. That's my car. I helped learn how to and do rebuild the engine, the carburetors, and it goes fast. And because it goes fast, I only run it on the track, a sanctioned track. And that's a nice long smoky burnout. I have other hobbies, but that's my favorite one. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kleiner. That was amazing. I loved hearing about your diverse experiences. I cannot believe you've done all of that in your career. And I think that's really and inspiring because, you know, you don't stay in the same place doing the same thing for your whole life. That's really cool how you kind of move around. Yeah. I do have a few questions, and I'm sure Miss Kathy does too later on, but something I thought was kind of interesting is you mentioned your first few mentors early on and when you were doing research. So like at UT Austin and then at UTMD Anderson. And then now you yourself mentor so many young people like me and all these viewers in their scientific endeavors. So how have these like mentor-mentee relationships shaped you? Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you, your mentor is going to be one of the most important people in your life aside from your mom or your dad or your grandparents. My mentor was my go-to person, and Dr. Lau was like the wings of the pelican around me, even though we're in Texas. John D. Giovanni, oh yeah. You know, I would even talk to the students about how to pick a mentor and say, you know, it's better to pick a lesser known mentor, not somebody famous, as long if if you click with them, if they seem to be the person that genuinely you like and they like you and you can talk to them candidly, it's not as important that they're famous, because if they're famous, they may not give you the time of day. Now, if you find somebody famous and they have the time of day, that's great. But maybe they're partially famous and I don't know. But I think that, you know, when I went to approach Dr. Lau that I was pregnant with Courtney, I was scared to death. You know, it was planned. You know, I was 25, you know. But she said, congratulations. And she just eased all my concerns. Johnny D was a little different when I told him about my second child, because I was working with radioactive carcinogens at the time. And he said, oh no, what are we going to do? But I had the most amazing coworkers. Suri Amiri was one of them. And so Johnny D set me up with Suri. So I would make Suri's buffers for his thin layer chromatography, which was not an easy task. And he would make the stock solutions of the carcinogenic, radioactive carcinogens for me. So it all worked out. And that's the thing. If a student doesn't want to be mentored, if you don't click, the mentor should not push it. You know, I've had very few students who didn't click with me, but if they didn't click, I'm not going to try to take it personally, because every person is just as unique, you know, as anything. And everybody has differences, and we have to celebrate those differences. But I always wanted to show students just sort of this, like this whole buffet of opportunities, and not try to fit them into some hole or peg, and just allow them to have the knowledge to select and pick what they thought was best for them, or even communicate with their families if their families could come.
Okay, great. Kind of moving on to like, the whole women in STEM, like, the topic, women in STEM. So, as someone who has achieved significant milestones in both research and in STEM education, what have been some obstacles that you faced being a woman in STEM, and how have you overcome them?
Um, well, I would say, here's a good one. Okay. So one of the obstacles, besides the I know they might have been horrifying, the negative things that I had to say, but there's no sugarcoating things. But let's talk about some practical things. I'm having my children. I've always been a La Leche League mom, meaning that I believed in nursing my children. And who was going to take care of the babies? What was I going to do? So I will tell you that the first time I went to a national conference, because I had to travel, I pumped 60 bags of milk before I went. And then my mom told me, and she would put my daughter on the phone while I was in Baltimore. She's crying. She wants her mommy, pulling those guilt strings. And me having to deal with the issues of what to do with all of that while I'm traveling, which it's called pump and dump. I mean, we're being real frank here. I decided no more of that. From then on, as long as my mother was physically able to do so, I paid for my mother's plane ticket and my daughter's plane ticket, and they went with me. And it turned out great, because when we went to San Diego, my colleague, Jung Mi, brought her daughter, Michelle, and my mom babysat both Michelle and Courtney, who were about the same age, and they played together while the rest of us went to the conference. You just have to get creative. Yeah, and then my son, Michael, had been to New Orleans 3 times as a baby or an infant toddler, because I just refused to travel without. So I brought my mom with me. So it was great bonding with my mom too, because I got to go to all the antique stores and, you know, have some great fond memories of her. When my mother got to the point where she was not able to go with me anymore, my dad went. When I had Austin, that same summer, I had a conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so, of all people, my dad went with me, carried Austin with him, and he was only maybe 4 months old. Um, and my dad had never stayed in such a fancy hotel before. He couldn't wait to get on the phone to tell his brother about it. But he would feed the baby the bottle that I would prepare while I was off at the conference and stuff, you know, staying in a separate room. You know, it was like a suite. It all worked out. So you just have to get really creative. And as scientists, we have to think outside the box. So that was a barrier that I learned how to conquer.
Yes, I completely understand. And I think something that's super great is that, like, over the past few years, past few decades, the amount of women in STEM have been increasing. And not just in STEM, I just think in like all professional careers, so many women have been, going forward. And I think that's great. And I was actually reading something recently about how there are more women applying to college than men nowadays, which is completely opposite from what it was like 100 years ago. So super inspiring also. And then in your experience, how do you think we can even better support women in STEM starting from an early age, like elementary school, middle school, and encourage them to explore careers in STEM?
How can we encourage them to explore careers in STEM? Well, I'll tell you that at those ages, especially that third, fourth, fifth grade, I don't know if it's a girl thing. Maybe it is. They want to feel like they have to be perfect at everything and can't fail. And they want to please others. That is definitely the people pleaser aspect. So we need to let them know that it's okay to fail, that failure is learning, that if you don't fail, you didn't try. And so reaching out and exploring, you know, when they're young, they will, but there's this point where they stop doing that. We want them to stay curious and continue to explore, allow themselves, give themselves permission to fail, because that's the good time to fail. You don't want to fail when you're a heart surgeon, okay? You want to fail when you're in fifth grade, when there's not as much at stake. And then the other thing is family responsibilities. I lost one student to an internship because her mother insisted that she stay home and take care of her younger sibling. I don't know what we can do about that yet, but that does tend to fall more on the females than the males in general. Maybe if the community all draws together to support. I even try to find daycare for the mom so that the girl could go to the University of Arizona for that internship, you know.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had for you today. Your presentation was very inspiring, and I'm glad I got the chance to hear. And you've done so much. So I think all of us Shreveport, Louisiana women are very thankful and just continue to do what you do. And I'm very excited to continue meeting new women and seeing the amazing things that all of you guys are doing in your careers. So yes, if Miss Kathy, you have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead, or if not, I'll hand it over to you.
So thank you, Ashni. Awesome. And Heather, my friend and colleague along the I-20 corridor here, I'm going to end it on a light note. Okay. So I love that you shared your passion for drag racing. And I think it is important that we point out to young ladies how important it is to take care of themselves, to have balance in their lives, and to be fearless in their choices. And so I wonder first, did you ever have a period of self-doubt? And how did you navigate into the fearless world of drag racing?
Well, are you talking about the self-doubt of drag racing or the self-doubt of my career?
I'm thinking of just in general, women tend to
Okay.
go through these phases where, they don't think they can do it all. And listening to you talk,
Mm.
you pretty much paint a picture that women can do it all. It's not easy, but they can. So I wonder if you ever had those moments of self-doubt because you became quite confident and ultimately ended up squarely in a man's world. So
Oh,
how
yeah,
did you
right.
navigate it? How did you navigate it? And then tell us a little bit more about the drag racing.
Oh, that is great, Kathy. So, well, number one, I grew up with all boys. I was the only girl. So, my brothers expected me to be like a boy. I test drove all of their go-karts, um, and all of their other inventions and creations and cars and stuff, and helped my big brother work on cars long before I got into drag racing. My first husband was a mechanic, but well, I will say that when I was going through graduate school, I had those self-doubts. Am I good enough? Can I do this? Should I do something else? Maybe I should just go into teaching, you know, or industry or a government job, something safe and secure. A lot of us women did that. I remember my female colleagues, especially having those same self-doubts. And especially because Dr. Lau and the other professors held us to a standard. Our standard was you are expected to become a tenure track faculty member, nothing less. And I did it. I did it. And I got tenure. I did it, you know? But how in the world did I get over those fears? Um, sometimes you just grit your teeth, close your eyes, and you just do it. And that's what I had to do. I mean it because and then when I got into Johnny D's lab and I was working with the natural products and changing gears, some people when they work on their PhD and they go into their postdoctoral fellow, they stay in the same field. Oh no. I did something different, and that was what was so cool and wild about it was getting to do something new and fun. And I mean, I was still somewhat related, with all of the chemistry, biochemistry, stuff like that. Now, when it comes to drag racing, I learned from the best, Buddy Borg, a Cajun from South Louisiana, who just happened to live near us and was a friend of Austin's dad. And Buddy Borg was an American Hot Rod Association world champion long before National Hot Rod Association. So before NHRA, there was AHRA. And Buddy Borg had a 1970, oh gosh, what was it? 76 Duster with a straight six. And he had a different elapsed time on the left lane than the right lane of the racetrack. And Buddy Borg sat in my car with me, helmets on, and taught me how to race down the track. And he didn't mince words, let me tell you. But I learned from the best. And after that, I mean, I had to start with, some easier cars, but eventually I was ready to race anybody's car. I raced my husband's Plymouth Barracuda, 69 Plymouth Barracuda. I raced Austin's dad's 66 Dodge Dart. Yeah, we're all Plymouth. And I mean, those were 11-second cars. I even took my car to before 911. I had permission from the county commissioner to take it to the airport in Smithville, Texas, where there's a 3/4 mile concrete track. As long as I didn't leave any rubber, I could go as fast as I wanted and I would get it to 145 miles an hour. It was great because the chassis on that car is so solid. But the thing I'm scared of is racing on the street, breaking the law, having a wreck. That's why I race the strip, not the street.
So I love that we, in our inaugural episode of our STEM Her Way webinar series, We have shown just how multifaceted women in STEM can be. You have different generations of folks involved on this panel today. You have heard from people with their passion. You have been able to explore some very interesting opportunities. And this kind of sets the stage for where we want to go with this. We want our young ladies to feel like they can do whatever they want to do. We want them to find their path. We want them to pursue their passion, and we want them to conquer the world. Heather, thank you so much for being with us, our very first guest, and a very special thanks to Ashni for giving birth to this wonderful opportunity. We're already excited for our next episode, and you'll be getting information about that soon. But until then, remember, ladies, STEM your way, not the way anyone else expects it to be. That's what we want for you. So we are going to sign off for our first episode, and we wish everyone a STEM-tastic evening.